Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
But you went through about 20 or 30 seconds where your face froze,
Was that
looking down. Yeah, a bit like, yeah, looking down. At least
okay?
it wasn't a rude look. You're all right.
At least I wasn't stuck on something rude. It wasn't a rude gesture. Hello and welcome to the Cloud Therapist channel. I'm Richard Simon. This is the March 2023 edition of Cloud State of Play. Again, I have with me Paul Bevan. Paul is the Research Director of Infrastructure at Bloor Research. How are you doing, Paul?
Not too bad, I have to say. It's the weather's getting a bit better. It's brighter in the spring, and maybe there's a little spring in my step too.
Fantastic. That's what we like to hear. Paul, so we're back for more ranting and discussions, and we've decided to pick on three interesting topics for this month. So the first one is the so-called sorry state of technical marketing or tech marketing. I think that was one of yours. Second one is the implications of the EU DORA Act. So we'll go into a little bit more details about what DORA is and what it stands for and things like that. And we'll get to hear your opinion on that. And then the third one I've picked on is the Google Digital Forecast, which I did touch on a section of it, I think in the February edition of Cloud State of Play. So I'm picking on a different one for this time, and we'll go into the details of that particular section. So without any further delay, let's jump right into the sorry state of tech marketing.
And I'll just qualify that it's technology marketing, not technical marketing. But anyway, that's fine. Bit of a big bugbear of mine. I saw a proper rant this time.
Right.
And given that I was a marketeer for many years, it's I'm shouting at my co-workers, my peers, if you like. I think the two things the sort of aligned that sort of come together is the first is what happened to benefits at the moment. When you go into any, and we've just come out of Cloud Expo, Data Center World, and that huge show, and it's you're blitzed with features and functions. And I was just trying to put myself in the position of probably a non-technical business user trying to go around and see and hear and listen to what was going on. And it is it speeds and feeds, to put it in a sort of old-fashioned sense. You're getting a whole list of it does this, it does that, it's really good at this and that and the other, and you keep having to say to people, it's sort of, so what does it do in terms of business benefit for me? And I had one particular experience on a stand, and I won't name the company, where I started to talk with, it's a cloud, one of the cloud vendors, and not one of the big cloud, but a sort of solution vendor within the cloud environment. And I got their technical support guy, and he was brilliant, absolutely great. And we're starting to have this really good conversation, and he could take it into what was going on. And then, of course, he got pulled because he was talking to an analyst and wasn't talking to an end customer. So he got pulled at one point. So I've just got to, and that's fine. And I was then palmed off onto, is the best way of describing it, one of the salespeople on the stand, who was hopeless. I mean, literally, they just trotting out facts. And when I sort of questioned around this, and you could see, and he was trying to get rid of me as fast as he could. And it just made me think, that as an analyst, when I go and talk to these firms and we get briefings, is that so often you have to say to them, what's it for? Not what do you do? What is it for, and why should I care?
Right.
And we're just not seeing that. I mean, and this is a cyclical thing. So come back to cloud specifically. This is not new in the industry. You go back into the 70s and 80s, and you go through this sort of cycle of feeds and speeds. It does this. It's great. It's wonderful technology, until they suddenly realize that the end user isn't, getting it, and actually they're finding it harder and harder to sell, and they start to develop the business-oriented stories and the business benefits, and then the new technology comes along. So we're going to talk at some point in the future about some of those transitions, but you transition from mainframe to client server to PC world, to all those, and all each technology turn, it appears that the new marketing people, because they actually take new marketing people on and don't use the ones from the old technology, have forgotten all those sort of learnings from the previous gen and go straight back to feeds and speeds again. And I think that's where we're at the moment. And I was genuinely, my head was starting to spin after all the stuff at Tech Show London. Right. So that's a particular one. But I wanted to bring in another angle, which I think is potentially more damaging at the moment than anything else, is the sort of misuse and conflation of terms. Cloud itself. What is again, looking at the stands, the number of hosting companies that really don't have a cloud solution. We're talking about cloud,
right? Yeah.
And again, okay, that's fine. And all sorts of people jumping in with cloud migration and this, that, and the other, when at best they were thinking about, co-locating an application into a hosting center. And you just think, okay, stop misusing the term, or let's get a better understanding of the term. Yeah. I think we've had this discussion before on cloud.
Yes, we have.
To me, it's a consumption mechanism. The cloud technology that sits underneath it is quite specific and unique to those sort of implementations, whether it's microservices or Kubernetes or all the sort of elements that we've come to expect in a cloud consumption model. But the actual cloud itself is so misused that you're getting senior managers and business leaders going, "Oh, we've got to go cloud," without any understanding of what that means. So I think that was the first one. More specifically, if you look at observability as a topic, it had a very specific meaning when it was first being talked about a year, 18 months ago. Right. Around this sort of DevOps oriented, site reliability engineer oriented. How do I understand how my development impacts the infrastructure? It's predictive. It's looking forward. But it's been, co-opted, I think is probably the best word, by the majority of monitoring vendors. Yeah. To as another way of saying end-to-end visibility. And we've now got observability. So I think people who first, in the DevOps sphere, who were looking at observability must be a little annoyed, to put it mildly. But you now can't go anywhere without somebody having an observability solution. It's a bit like having an ology. You go to university and I got an ology. Everybody's got an observability.
I've certainly seen you and I have talked about conflation before, and it's been on multiple levels as well. I would have to say. I mean, we talked about sort of, I think one of those was digital transformation and cloud transformation and cloud migration. Certainly around the AIOps, observability, and APM. So you had kind of, up to about 18 months ago, you had players in those separate spaces. Now they've just copied and pasted all three terms across all of their marketing stuff. And whether they're any good at it or not is irrelevant.
Absolutely. And it makes it very difficult for the people who effectively started the market, if I can call it that, really kick-started it. Because everybody just jumps on a particular bandwagon. I mean, again, talking to an AIOps vendor today, they're moving in a different direction. I say different, it's a development. And I actually said to them, are you going to have to change your positioning from being an AIOps vendor to something else? And I'm not going to say who they were and what their positioning was, but it was an interesting discussion because they could see that they have a whole bunch of they didn't believe they had many competitors, but there's an awful lot of people saying they're in AIOps,
Right.
and it wasn't the genuine AIOps, so as it was first mooted. And I think that's part of the problem. And I'm sort of realistic, but I have to have a rant every now and again that said, please can we have, less of this conflation? But it is like Canute trying to hold the waves back.
Yes.
The minute the market takes it into its head that it's going to do. But the impact on particularly business users is confusing. And it just, it seems to have got stage. I mean, the one I'm sort of watching now with sort of a level of trepidation is the whole issue of data mesh and data fabric.
Yes.
I feel like ripe for,
nearly
conflation and, miscommunication.
I feel like that's going to be a future topic for us, Paul. What do you think?
I think that probably is. I mean, I am fascinated. Although I'm responsible for infrastructure, more and more it's becoming about data and data quality, data management and data pipe, all those sort of areas. And so I'm having to get up to speed on the whole area of data management and new data structures very, very quickly. But yeah, I think that will be a topic, and the fabric versus the mesh, I think, is an interesting one.
Yeah, and I think I've mentioned data mesh in the past. So yeah, and if anybody wants to check that out, I'll try and find which episode it was and include it. The one that I kind of wanted to just come in on very quickly was, which actually came up in a panel discussion I was on recently, which was subsequent to Cloud Expo Europe, which you and I attended, was Polycloud. So Polycloud came up in the discussion, and I was like, yay, I actually know what Polycloud means. And thanks to Paul, he's actually told me what Polycloud means. So I was okay with Polycloud being mentioned. But that's kind of one of those, again, as you said, I think when you heard it first, was kind of, a term that was thrown in, and we were kind of going, that doesn't make any sense or whatever. So
yeah, in fact, one of the things that was interesting listening to that, it was quite clear that he'd just thrown it in and hadn't really thought about the difference.
I was just kind of saying that it's it's like that sales guy that came up to you and started sort of firing all this stuff. Again, sort of Polycloud was just kind of thrown out there as a term without any sort of real backing to it. So that's the thing too.
I actually backed this guy into a corner later on because they fed me lunch. I thought, well, okay, let me get my money's worth here out of this.
Right.
And backed him into a corner about Polycloud. And he sort of pulled over one of his technical guys. And actually there was some sense in it, although I thought they had it ass about face. Right. They were trying to differentiate between multi-cloud, where you have different applications running in different clouds.
Right. Yeah.
And Polycloud, where you have the same application running in different clouds and maybe talking to each other, and it was okay.
Okay, but that for me would be cross-cloud.
If it was the 1st of April, I think you're being
no, another week to go. Yeah,
another week tomorrow.
I'm quite genuine about that. Cross-cloud, I've heard, and that would be the definition, where the application, as crazy as that idea might sound, is actually running on multiple public clouds. And it is, yes, it's all in one, is connected, or at least some services or aspects of it are in one, maybe other aspects of it are in another. So
even now we can sort of go, oh God, here's another term, please. No, and it's like, so the whole issue, I just think, there is another challenge, which is the sort of link between sales and marketing. Is just a lack of patience that anybody has for everything at the moment. The lack of ability to sort of describe things in detail, the need to move fast, be agile, has sort of gone into tech marketing. I downloaded a research document from a vendor the other day, and I think it was the fastest response to getting my phone ring and the salesperson being on the line saying, "Can we have a meet to discuss your interest in this?" And it was literally, I guess it was under an hour between me downloading the research and the phone ringing and somebody coming on. You think, and again, that's another argument I have with tech marketing is, lack of patience, lack of, I've read something about, do you want to interrupt a stranger or do you want to help inform a friend?
Right.
And at the moment, tech marketing is interrupting a stranger over and over again and annoying them.
Right. Okay,
So,
I think
rant over.
Yes, I think we'll move on. I think that's a good way to finish that particular one. Okay, so on from that to Dora.
Dora, yeah, interesting. I mean, there's a number of things coming out of the EU at the moment, and I think on another occasion we'll probably look at sustainability, because I think there's some big moves coming from sustainability. But this one caught my attention. So DORA is Digital Applications Resilience Act.
Okay, you got the second one wrong. So
digital operational resilience.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, if you got that wrong, I completely got it wrong, because I thought we were talking about Dora the Explorer, the children's cartoon character.
Yeah, I know. The first time I googled Dora, that's what I got. But I mean,
and I had to put EU in front of it.
We will provide the links to the EU site as the details at the end of it. But
we will.
But the thing that was interesting for me, I mean, I've spent quite a long time over the past few years, obviously looking at the issue of infrastructure performance management, and as we've grown into a cloud first, a cloud dominant environment where technology is now the business. I've been pushing for some time to say, look, you need to link that performance of the infrastructure to the business, the business outcome.
Yeah.
And we've had this probably conversation as well. If I'm a retail company with online shopping, I want to know how many trolleys, carts were lost as a result of an outage or a slowdown. And so all those sort of issues. And it's still today, there is very little in the way of linking what is effectively IT operational information with the business operation. The people are talking about it. The big SIs are beginning to start to put consultancy together to try and draw that together. But even when they wheel customers out, they're still not really business oriented. So what Dora's done, which is intriguing, is that they're saying, from an and this is aimed primarily in the first instance at financial services companies. What they're trying to do is minimize or manage the risk that the financial system crashes because of IT infrastructure problems. And therefore they're looking at a whole new set of legislation and rules and reporting that says, if you're in that marketplace, you need to be able to do enhanced risk management, not just risk management about whether you've got exposure to bad loans or those, but risk management in terms of the impact. So you need to the impact of IT failures or degradation. And therefore you need to be able to measure that against the business that you're actually providing the infrastructure for. So now, apart from a little analyst sitting in the Midlands in England going, you ought to be doing this, the EU is actually going, you need to be able to identify infrastructure, the relationship with the infrastructure and the business, the business process or the business application. And we're going to monitor and manage you on it. The interesting thing from a cloud perspective is that while this is an EU act, it looks likely, there's some rumors that UK is just going to do a DORA lookalike. And there are various copy and paste pretty much into the same thing. This comes into effect in January 2025. So there's a couple of years for people to get their heads around what they've got to do. But the interesting one from a cloud perspective was that while at the moment it's financial services and it's EU financial services, if you're a cloud provider providing services to one of those EU financial organizations, you're covered as well.
Right.
So you might be doing that from outside the European Union, but if you're providing services into an EU-based organization, you are covered too. And they go further, is that if you haven't got a subsidiary in an EU company, in an EU country, you need to set one up.
Right.
So
interesting.
There's two implications. There's implications for the end user that says, I really must get to a stage now where I can map applications and business processes to the underlying infrastructure and see what the relationship is and when it's being impacted, which is, okay. A lot of people talk about it, but we haven't really got there yet. And the second one is on cloud service providers is just because you sit outside the EU, if your customers are inside the EU, you're covered. All these sort of gotchas in terms of that. So it just sort of interesting. So that whole issue, and my sense is that it will move beyond financial services pretty rapidly. Either because other industries can see the benefit of it, or that EU and other governments say, no, actually, this is critical to critical infrastructure. Effectively, that's a very specific term, and I'm now using critical infrastructure in the wrong way. But back to my previous conflation discussion, sorry. But these are mission critical systems for the economy.
Yes. Yeah. No, I can certainly. I mean, I would have thought really that that kind of mitigation would have been within each individual bank or financial institute's kind of interest to do that anyway, right? They would offer that anyway, presumably.
Well, I think what's been identified is, yes, I mean, banks have fairly sophisticated, doesn't always work, but fairly sophisticated risk management, and processes. Sometimes they fail spectacularly, but actually do that. But that's all based on the asset or or the process. It's not based on the underlying technology, and I'm still having discussions with IT operations and business departments that don't talk to each other. Really, and if you say to them, can you map your applications to the infrastructure so you know exactly which bits of the infrastructure is being used by these applications and services at any one point in time? Most of them go, no. And that's true for banks. And these are now absolutely critical to the running of the business. So I think I've said before, this is a board assurance issue.
So obviously it's not just the kind of the sort of the bank's operations, but it's this is focusing more on IT, right? It's the underlying technologies that they're kind of focusing on.
It's really to align the sort of risk management they're used to doing for their operations to a new risk management for the underlying IT.
Okay. So it reminds me of that. I don't know if you've seen that film. I don't know what decade it's from. Fight Club with Brad Pitt and Edward Norton, where towards the end they rig up all explosives in all the financial sector of, presumably it's based in the US, and then they press the button and all of the buildings where all the banks are all sort of collapse and explode and collapse and what have you. And that for them is resetting the banking industry. So everybody's debts and everything else, the idea is that they disappear. Obviously whoever wrote that script is not an IT person and didn't refer to anybody in IT. So there is this thing called backup and there is this thing called disaster recovery, and now we're going to have DORA.
And there is this thing called cloud. So none of the systems are actually in the buildings you just...
Exactly, yes.
I mean,
so might have just destroyed some expensive, executive desks, but that's about it. Some really expensive mahogany desks, but that's about it, really. So, okay, so on the so it's not
But again,
go ahead.
No, it's, you know, what's happened in the last week with SVB, you know, and also to an extent with Credit Suisse. It just shows how immediate things are in terms of the financial services market, you know, and that was just sentiment that was moving that. Or, but you know, the ability, for example, to move deposits. And before, you know, we go back to Northern Rock, you know, what, back in 2008 and Lehman Brothers, things like that. Northern Rock, people were queuing outside to draw money out.
So
now,
so run on the banks.
now you just do it literally, you know, on your phone, app or whatever, and you can shift it in a second. And that's what happened to SVB. I mean, they literally happened faster than anybody could do it. And so that's part of, you know, that obviously that happened. I mean, Dora's been in the mix now for, you know, the best part of 2 years. The EU's process sort of to try and get to an act on it. But it just, that's an example of how fast things move and how dangerous they can be if you haven't got it right. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, so I mean, it's you know, it's normally the kind of the resilience is around sort of things like, you know, liquidity, investments, you know, preventing runs on the banks and so on. Whereas this is kind of saying actually the IT needs to kind of get the same treatment as well. So it'll be interesting to see how, you know, how resilient they are. So okay.
Yeah. And as I say, I think it will leach out into retail and into other areas of business that rely as much on their infrastructure for their business model as well. So I think, you know, I liken it to moving from, you know, spin and fudge and winging it to life's real now, guys. You're going to have to work and get this absolutely sorted out.
Yeah. So actually, okay. So if this is an EU act, what if I kind of just for fun, let's turn the tables a little bit. So can I invent another act called the EORA Act, the Energy Operational Resilience Act, and ask the governments not to kind of rely on one source for their energy, and then which kind of has a knock-on effect to our prices and chains, you know, supply chains and things like that. Or yet another one called the IORA Act, starts with an I. So it's an Inflationary Operational Resilience Act. How about that one? So maybe to have a think about that. That's for the EU to think about.
That's for the EU to think about. Yeah, absolutely. But again, I'd like the UK to be part of that as well.
Yes, well, we can always copy and paste for now, and then
we can always copy
as we've done so far, and then we just go, oh, let's make a little tweak here, let's make a little tweak there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but largely copy and paste. I mean, you have to think about adequacy, you know, and so they've got to keep adequacy rules. You know, in 2025, the EU will be looking again at all the adequacy rules. If we diverge too far and they don't like it, doing business with Europe will be difficult again. So.
Well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I'm sure our lawyers can cross that bridge for us.
Yes.
Excellent. Right. Well, okay. Well, that's Dora. So let's move on to the third discussion, which was around the Google Digital Forecast, 40 plus cloud computing stats and trends to know in 2023. Now, like I said, I think I covered the cloud security section of this report last time. Again, we'll include all the sort of links in the description of the video. I wanted to appropriately, and maybe kind of segueing from Dora, to focus on the section called business resilience or financial resilience, depending on whether you look at the title or actually that particular section. Google seems to have kind of changed the names or messed up the names for some reason. But anyway, it actually said in that, just as a kind of a, you know, scary stats, as I would call them, sort of hit you right in the face with, 41% of global tech and business leaders plan to increase their investment in cloud-based services and products to respond really to the economic climate. So that was kind of the big stat that came from that. And then the section kind of breaks down to 7 areas. I'm not sure we're going to be able to cover all of those, but let's kind of just rattle through some of those and see where we get to. So the first one said IT leaders are looking to the cloud to help them prepare for whatever lies ahead. Now, it said due to the current macroeconomic climate, cloud leaders say they are increasing their use of cloud-based services and products, planning to migrate from legacy enterprise software to cloud-based tools, and migrating on-premises workloads to the cloud. And that was based on Google's Cloud Brand Pulse survey from fourth quarter last year. So that's interesting that kind of, despite what we've heard a little bit from the press about the doom and gloom of cloud repatriation and so on, during this sort of last, fourth quarter of 2022, first quarter 23, the plans seem to be still in place. That IT leaders are still kind of looking towards cloud to help them kind of prepare for whatever lies ahead.
And I come back, and we'll maybe sort of cross swords on this one. Is when those leaders talk about cloud, do they actually mean putting it on Google Compute Platform or AWS or Azure? Right. Or do they mean taking it to a co-location facility? I think one of the things absolutely no doubt about is that people are getting out of enterprise data centers, full stop. Yes. Because of the cost of the cost of running them, the capital cost, cost of running them, updating them to be sustainable, and all those sort of issues. Are they? Because you're getting conflicting messages from Google and AWS and Microsoft Azure, because they're cutting people. Yes. They are highlighting in their reports that there are headwinds, that their customers are trying to save money, and therefore that's why they're cutting resources. They're trying to cut their cost base. So there's a sort of slight mismatch. And I think there are still a lot of new applications that will go to the cloud. And there will be a lot of applications being migrated away from enterprise data centers that are called going to the cloud, but they're not. Back to my original thing, it's a consumption model. Yeah. Are they really cloud oriented? Are they glorified virtualization, or even glorified legacy applications that now sit in another data center?
Which we did discuss last time, right? We talked about where are you running your private cloud. I think that was
we did
one of the additions last year.
Absolutely. So again, and this is the challenge of trying to read between the lines of all the different reports that you see. Yes, people, enterprises need to modernize their IT estate. They need to be far more flexible and agile to meet, there was a term that Google were using there about, meeting any eventuality. I think it was, being prepared for any eventuality. Doesn't necessarily mean you put it on Google Compute Platform. And so I think there's a sort of, so yes, cloud in the broadest sense, people will be getting out of owning their own data centers. Yeah, absolutely. No doubt.
So that will be interesting. And I think the I in the unfiltered section or unfiltered segment on the channel, I actually took out the that particular discussion that we had about where are you running your private cloud? What does it look like, and what technology platforms it's running, and so on. Okay, so let's move on to the second point. So it says. Second point says cloud decision makers are prioritizing staffing efforts when it comes to cloud cost optimization. So the premise on that says more than half of organizations are either hiring new staff or retraining existing staff to better optimize their cloud spend. And the source for this is Forrester's 2022 Infrastructure Cloud Survey. So, I mean, that's kind of, I think, probably a given, wouldn't you say? You want to kind of keep that experience because, first of all, not everything's going to go to cloud. And those people that you have, you kind of want to give them the opportunity to kind of retrain and reskill anyway, but also bring in kind of, a younger crowd, which will kind of, help with some of those more sort of modern, born in the cloud sort of, experiences as well, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The driver, as much as anything else, for reskilling and upskilling is the fact that there is a shortage of the right sort of people coming through from a tech perspective. Again, I think we've had that debate before. So that's an absolute given that they need to do that, and I think we're moving into an era where the grey hairs like me and you have still, yeah, exactly, and all on top, still have a role to play. And I think, there would come a point in time, whereas if you got to 50 in the IT industry and you were made redundant, trying to get another job in the IT industry was nigh on impossible.
Yeah.
Now I think there's a changing attitude. So I think, yes, reskilling, and actually that's going to be a darn sight cheaper than trying to, completely get rid of and then hire a completely new sort of cohort of people. So I think it's a given, and the whole cost optimization, the whole optimization of your cloud, it's a different set of skills and a different set of processes to do that than it was for the old on-premises environment. So I think there's quite a lot of new learning to get on. So this whole idea of FinOps, has gained traction as ways of understanding cost benefit analysis in a cloud environment, and also managing the complexity of cloud pricing, particularly.
Indeed. Okay, so item 3 or point 3 said most companies have yet to embrace cloud FinOps, and I think that's kind of fairly, again, not surprising. I won't go into kind of all the details, but just said 2022 survey for cloud FinOps practitioners, 37% of the 500 plus respondents said that their maturity level for FinOps was kind of in the crawl stage, still trying to get to grips with the basics. 41% said they were in the walk stage, where practitioners kind of had established some practices but not perfected them. So basically, they haven't done anything yet. The 19% of participants said they were actually leading, the sort of, and they were kind of more mature, I think, in that approach. And the remaining respondents kind of comprised of pre-crawl segment. So according, again, the State of FinOps 2022 reports from the FinOps Foundation in this case.
Yeah, and I don't think that's surprising.
Again, I'm not surprised.
No, and I think, a lot of organizations have realized quite late the implications of not having control over your cloud spend, or as well, they haven't worked out the real benefits of what they're getting, and I think we've told this story before of, if you're doing, online business analytics in the cloud, you can carry on doing analytics till the cows come home, and run up quite a bill. Question is, what were you getting out of the business analytics? And that's so people have tended to see this as I'm spending too much money on the cloud, I need to control it. There needs to be a balancing. What benefit are we getting out of this? And it almost comes back to my original rant about, if you're all features and speeds and feeds and one is in cloud wonderful, and you haven't actually thought what are the business benefits, you'll do the wrong thing. And a FinOps, there is a danger that FinOps will just focus on cost control rather than benefit optimization.
Oh, yes.
But I don't think those stats are unusual.
Yeah, no, I agree. So number 4 on there says companies in every industry can capture substantial value from cloud. This says a detailed review of cloud cost optimization levers and value-oriented business case uses foresees more than $1 trillion in run rate across Fortune 500 companies as up for grabs by 2030. So this is from McKinsey's 2021 report. So companies in every industry can capture substantial value from cloud. But that's, again, you know, if you kind of look at it, you know, even as simple as, you know, a company not really needing kind of the, you know, the complexity of sort of putting lots of stuff in the cloud and sort of running their own thing, just kind of, you know, doing their HR using a SaaS sort of platform, you know, that's kind of using the cloud. So that certainly can count as part of that sort of, you know, whatever that industry is, or whichever industry they're in, you know, capturing value from the cloud.
Yeah, I think, you know, this is where you have to put cloud and digital transformation and process change together to get that figure. I mean, if, you know, knowing McKinsey's, they will be, you know, touting some wonderful sort of consulting engagements to make this one work. But
sure.
I mean, I've read some of the stuff that they've written, and it's quite right that, you know, if you just put stuff into the cloud and try and control your costs, I don't think you'll get anywhere near that figure. But if you use it as the catalyst for, you know, business process change, you know, more, you know, cultural change, all those sort of issues, yes, I think huge sums are available. You know, and again, we've mentioned AI in the past. Again, I think that's completely transformational too. But you need the cloud quite often to deliver some of those benefits.
Yeah.
So yeah, whether you call it Industry 4.0 or whatever the sort of, you know, your move, we are at the cusp of a very, very different sort of business and technology world that is cloud enabled, that could get those sort of figures that they're talking about. But whether it happens as quickly as they say is one I would probably challenge, simply because as humans we are notoriously bad at moving at pace across the piece.
Maybe that's just
well, that's all I'd say. So I say, if they said 2030, I'd say make that 2040 and you might get $1 trillion worth.
Yeah, maybe it's 2030 is wishful thinking. Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Right. So let's move on to the fifth one, I think, on there. So this one is called industry clouds. Now, hold that thought. I know what you might be thinking.
Industry there, what?
Industry clouds. So, but hold on to that.
Clouds.
Yeah, hold on to that. Let me just read a little bit more, and then we'll come back. Okay, so industry clouds will increase organizational agility, speed innovation, and accelerate the time to value. By 2027, more than 50% of enterprises will use industry cloud platforms to accelerate their business initiatives. And then it says, industry cloud platforms enable a shift from generic solutions to platforms designed to fit specific needs, basically, of an industry. And that's from a Gartner ebook about top strategic technology trends 2022.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, question, industry clouds, vertical clouds, same thing?
We've had they're certainly happening.
But are they the same thing?
Industry clouds and vertical clouds. Well, good question. I don't know is the straight answer. I would say yes, they probably are. But it's a bit like the term platform. It can mean an awful lot of different things to different people.
Well, it does, Paul. So it does say. I mean, the bit that I said, it said a shift from generic solutions to platforms designed to fit the specifics of that industry. Yeah. So that for me would say vertical cloud. That sounds like a vertical cloud.
I think you're right. It is a vertical cloud. I think what my concern is that, you know, you've got to be quite clear about how the business model is going to work. So I've got an example. I don't know whether I'm allowed to mention individual companies here or whether we'll get into trouble.
You'll get sued, so that's fine. Go ahead.
So, so IBM have vertical cloud. They have industry clouds. And I have to say, I've seen the best and the worst of that. You know, the one is, and I gave them the feedback anyway, so they probably had the feedback and hate me anyway. But their financial services one was really interesting. I thought it was well put together, and it really was helping financial services institutions create a different sort of marketplace, a different ecosystem where they were providing services that were radically different and bringing people from lots of different spheres into almost like a marketplace. Whereas their public sector one was a sort of conglomeration of Lego bricks of bits of security and or governance that you would have to build quite a lot into to make them in any way useful. So I think this is the challenge with platforms in general. You know, the best platforms enable companies or developers or whatever to use a bunch of stuff, if I can use the technical term, that's already in place to speed up the development of whatever it is they're trying to achieve, either from a business model or a technology model point of view.
Right.
The worst ones are quite simply, I mean, you talk about platforms, you talk about an oil platform. The worst ones, you say to your oil drilling company, well, your platform is sitting sort of somewhere on, just behind Aberdeen somewhere, and there's 3 separate struts, some metal bits, and you're going to have to sort of bolt them all together yourself, and then find a ship to tow it out there, and all of. Whereas actually, what you want is somebody to say, here's the platform ready to go. We've organised the ship, we've plonked it on site. Now put your drill in, and down you go. And it's that sort of difference. The danger is that everybody will have a platform, everybody will have a vertical cloud, and there will be this huge difference between something that's really well put together, well thought through, with all the bells and whistles you need to make it work, and others that are conglomeration of bricks.
Yes. So it'll be, as we said before about vertical clouds, it'll be the IBM AS400 living on in the cloud. So it's back.
It's back. I mean,
and you run 3 apps on it, and that's it.
I think
that's your industrial cloud.
I think what we ought to do is put a link to the IBM Financial Services Industry Cloud, because that I thought was probably best practice. I was really very good. I was actually impressed with that one. Unfortunately, they blotted their copybook by talking about the public sector one straight afterwards, and it was like, really? So we'll be good to IBM, and actually, I think people would find it quite interesting to see what they're doing.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's move on to the 6th one. I'm just sort of conscious of time. So this one says automated cloud cost optimization policies can save time and reduce wasted spend. More than 40% of technical and business professionals are using automated policies to shut down workloads after hours and to right-size underutilized instances. This is from Flexera's 2022 State of the Cloud report.
Yes. What can you say? I think that's
great. Let's move on. We agree. We agree for once.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the sort of simple, straightforward thing you can do fairly quickly. Yeah. If you're not doing it, do it.
Yeah, and I was on the last AWS Fest event that I co-hosted. I think all the AWS guys kind of came out with guns blazing around cost optimization and how you can save money in AWS and so on, and that was great. But everything there, and I did make this comment to them as well, this is my kind of probably main criticism, was that it was the usual stuff. It was here's 100 tools, good luck with using them to save money. It was like, how about you apply some AI and ML behind that, right? How about if we copy and paste this report into ChatGPT and then get ChatGPT. Poor old ChatGPT is overtaxed, overstressed, answering everybody's problems. Well, it's tackling everything from divorce cases to FinOps and cloud cost optimization at the moment. But how about you actually apply some AI and ML that will actually report back some intelligent stuff that says 99%, I'm sure if you were to shut these down between midnight and 6 a.m., nobody's going to notice a difference. If you spin down all of these containers or VMs or whatever it is you've got, nobody's going to notice a difference. And that would be the kind of stuff I'd like to see in this space, this so-called cloud cost optimization space, rather than us figuring out all the stuff as poor old humans and then automating it using a Terraform script or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a role for AIOps, because I think AIOps will have a lot of that data.
Yeah.
And obviously, the fidelity of the data is going to be important, because obviously you don't want to make automated decisions based on dodgy data.
No.
And that's a challenge. But nonetheless, I think, yes, at the very least, you can sort of manhandle it and then do a script that does it. But
yeah,
I
mean,
think AIOps has a role to play there.
Yeah, and the last sort of gate will be a human gate for the decision, right? I'm not saying kind of unless like I said, that workload's sort of priority and sort of criticality for the business is not really that high. So even if the service was down for a while because you messed up and you took it down, you spun off those particular containers at that point, or that Kubernetes cluster, whatever it is, and maybe that you shouldn't have done it at 7 a.m. or something. Even if that service is down for a while, the business can live without that service. So up to that point, up to those types of sort of services, you can maybe apply sort of an automated way of doing it. But all the other ones, all we're asking for is, can you do the AIOps, whatever it is, can you do the analysis for me and then give me the report, and I can make the final sort of decision. I'll be the human gate, the last gate to make the decision of whether we should go ahead and do those things.
Yeah, no, and I think it's, over time, that human element will decrease.
Yeah,
because you'll get confident with the algorithm.
Well, that's the ML. That's the ML side of it, right?
Yeah.
That'll be, as it learns from from the data, it gets more experience with that. Then its accuracy increases.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we become more reliant on that, and then eventually, hey, it's actually doing it by itself. I don't even need to bother with it.
Yeah. There will be areas. I think it'll be a while before some of the mission critical stuff gets, but there's a whole raft of stuff that must be costing an arm and a leg because it's not being run properly, that actually doesn't have that impact. So yeah, I agree. I think we are in violent agreement on this one. My goodness, is that a time to stop?
Right. So seventh and last one, and we'll be brief on this one. So it says, when it comes to a strategic cloud computing partner, decision makers are looking for 3 specific characteristics. I'm hoping the characteristics are in here. So it says the majority, 54% of global tech and business leaders want a cloud service provider who helps them identify technology strategies to increase revenue or reduce costs. So more about the strategy and consulting aspect of it. It says further, 50% define a strategic partner as one who understands where my industry is going and has less solutions for future needs. And then 50% say it's having a service organization that helps implement and maintain my infrastructure. And this is from the Google's Cloud Brand Pulse survey from third quarter 2022. So overall, cloud strategy based around a best fit, a cloud computing partner that will help with things like decision making and have specific characteristics around, cloud services, identifying technology strategies that increase revenue and reduce costs.
Yeah, and a lot of that will rely on trust, I think. Maybe for another time, there's a new survey out that I've seen around enterprise buying of tech, tech solutions. And I was quite surprised at how much reliance is still placed on brand. And we tend to think of tech, buying decisions in business area and technology areas being very much about product functionality and fit to the requirement you've got.
Yeah.
And it's quite surprising how much business leaders rely on a trusted partner, one way or another. And so brand plays into that, and obviously the ability that you're hearing there in terms of strategic thinking to help them move forward. I actually agree. I think that's critical. The question is, who would those partners be? Would they be a Google Cloud or would they be a McKinsey? And that's an interesting question to have, or somebody else. And I say that's why I say I think an awful lot of it is about trust. Do you trust Google, AWS, and Microsoft to give you those decisions, or will you go with one of the consulting arms firms? And I think the consulting firms are not necessarily the way to go, to be honest. If I was putting my own spin on it, but
and they're more kind of about telling you what to do, but not necessarily how to do it, for example. So the interesting point here for me, I think, is the fact that actually this area was talked about and it was surveyed, because normally you don't get this, but I think it's really crucial that organizations do have a partner that they can trust and work with, and somebody who can become their sort of trusted advisor, and who's unbiased in terms of what they're doing. So if you decide to go with this cloud service provider, then they support you on that. If you go with this other one over here, they support you with that. Will actually help you make that decision, but not actually be biased towards one or the other necessarily.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think a lot you need to sort of separate out between the strategic directional help that you'll get and the physical, right now, go do it. How far do you want to hand all that across to a partner? Because ultimately, in the end, if you fall out with that partner and you haven't learned how to do it yourself, you're going to be in trouble. So, I mean, but the strategic direction and help with, where do we go? How do I make use of the technology? What's coming down the track? Absolutely, most firms could do with that. Even the largest ones need that sort of input.
Excellent. Okay, well, that's the end of the third section on that Google Digital Report. I think we're surveyed out for this particular session. So, as ever, thank you, Paul, again for hanging in there and giving us your insights and views again. Really appreciate that. We'll obviously put lots of links in the description of the video, so everybody can kind of go out and check out all the stuff that we've been talking about. Final thank you to all my viewers and subscribers. Really appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much for watching this talk. If you enjoyed the content, please comment, share, like, and subscribe to support the channel. See you next time.